What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. Welcome to another episode of Three for the Money.
Okay, coming down the home stretch here. Wild card weekend, which is pretty tasty, though we got some massive lines, but back at it again with my main man Stuckey from the Action Network. All these lines are presented by DraftKings. Uh, this season was kind of tale of the dominant teams and the really, really shitty teams. I mean, the 49ers went 6-11, and they're not even in the top 10. I mean, the bottom of the NFL was pretty putrid, and clearly the top of the NFL, Lions, Chiefs. I mean, I looked before we dive into game by game, the odds to win the Super Bowl. To me, after that Vikings game, and I know you don't want to overreact to one game, but now that they're going to have to go on the road, I think there are five teams that can win it. Clearly, the Lions and the Chiefs. Basically the Lions are basically 3-1, Chiefs 3.5-1, Ravens plus 550, Bills 6-1, Philly 7-1. Like to me, those are the only five teams that can win the Super Bowl. What say you?
Yeah, I agree. The Packers would be interesting to me, but they fade down the stretch, and then no Christian Watson, no Jair Alexander. It kind of limits what they can do from an upside perspective. I think that Detroit defense is still really vulnerable, especially if they play like a mobile quarterback who doesn't see ghosts like Sam Darnold did. Um, I think they're eventually going to get picked off their defense, but with their offense, home field advantage, they're certainly in the mix. Philly is as well. Their defense is real. They obviously have all the pieces on offense. Really just comes down to Hurts not holding the ball too long. But I think they can go into Detroit and win. And yeah, in the AFC, if the chalk holds this weekend, what I assume will be next Sunday night, the final game of divisional round, Bills Ravens will be an
That's a good
awesome
one.
game, and the winner of that versus the Chiefs, presumably, um, will be an awesome AFC Championship game. So yeah, I think you got the five right.
The Bucks, any, you know, could get a little frisky. Obviously, you play Washington, but then the second game would more than likely be Philly. Is that a good matchup? I know I saw Winfield's practicing this week. Clearly, offensively, when they get going, and I saw Baker said, the biggest difference this year than last year, and obviously last year the passing game was unreal. Is they're pretty multi-dimensional. I mean, Bucky Irving talk about this is the reason why you don't draft running backs in the first round. I mean, you get high-end players in the third and fourth round. To me, they're a team. I mean, they won a playoff game last year. I know they were playing the wounded Eagles, but then they went toe to toe with the Lions. Like they have a lot of guys on their team that shit have played in a lot of big games for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, they could be frisky. It's hard for me to see them going, beating Washington, then Philly, then Detroit on the road, and then beating the AFC team. But they certainly
Yeah,
could play.
not necessarily a Super Bowl run, but I could see them throwing a wrench in things. I mean, shit, they almost did last year.
Yeah, no, for sure. They're not going to be an easy out for anybody. I mean, they beat Philly. I know Philly didn't have, Brown or Smith starting or a couple offensive linemen. They were earlier this season. They went to Detroit and won also, which isn't easy to do. Although they were outgained by like 200 yards, Detroit just couldn't score in the red zone. But they won't be an easy out. I do like them this weekend against Washington. Daniels has had an amazing year, but still a rookie quarterback making his first playoff start on the road. Historically, that has not gone well. And if you look, quarterbacks making their first playoff start against quarterbacks who have playoff experience historically, 33% straight up, 33% against the spread. Numbers are not great. That also applies to Sam Darnold against Stafford. But I think this Washington team is pretty overrated. I mean, you look what they did down the stretch. I mean,
I
yeah,
agree.
granted, they won 12 games. Daniel was great, but they won. The only playoff team they beat all year was Philly, who was about to blow them out of the water before Hurts got hurt. And then Kenny Pickett came in, and then they came back. That's the only playoff team they won all year. They had the lowest strength of schedule in the entire conference. Uh, And you look at their past four victories. They beat the Saints with Spencer Rattler by one. They beat the Eagles because Hurts got hurt, so they beat Kenny Pickett on the last play of the game. They beat uh, the Falcons with a rookie quarterback making his first start in overtime on the last play of the game. And then they beat for the seed, they beat Trey Lance. And they needed Mariota to come in to really do that. They were down big in that game. This is a team, they won 6 games on the final play of the game, on the final play this season. And you go back to the Hail Mary against the Bears. So they were really fortunate all year. It's going to be a tough ask, especially that Tampa secondary is healthier. Their run D's been good. Todd Bowles will probably dial up some blitzes to get to Daniels, create some sacks, some negative plays. I'm not a believer in that Washington defense. They're definitely ahead of schedule with
For
Daniels.
sure. Yeah, I
Washington
agree.
fans have to be excited, but I like Tampa, which I'm surprised that game's actually not on Monday night. But usually you get the Texans in the Saturday after early afternoon slate. The Bucks is your Monday night special. But I like the Bucks and Baker to get it done, laying 3 at home.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I mean, I think that's got a chance to be maybe one of the worst games of the weekend. And I'm with you on Washington. To me, they had more of a feel like 2 years ago, that Giants team. It's like, how the hell did they do it? But if I remember correctly, I think that Giants team went 9-8. I mean, this team won 12 games. So it's like, I think they could be much better next year. Another draft, free agent money, and win like 10, you know? I mean,
Yeah, if you get like they have some holes on D they need to plug, and then Daniels could really use like another bona fide weapon, which would go a long way in boosting that offense. Maybe bring in like another veteran offensive lineman. But you look, it's like Ertz has done a ton, but I mean, he's ancient at this point. It's basically just McLaurin is like the receiver that you're worried about on that team. So it's amazing what they've done with the amount of talent that they actually have on the roster. So yeah, another draft, couple free agent additions to plug some holes, and Washington's definitely going to be an exciting team because you're this ahead of schedule, and what do you have? Quarterback on a rookie contract. Always a major advantage when that rookie is good.
like I bet if Dan and Peters, who weren't there at the time when the trade was made, but I think they would like to have Sweat. Like I think they would have just liked to pay him. If they would have had control at the time, they just would have given him like $90 million and had him on this team because that's one thing they're
Yep.
missing. It's like a really good. Now I'd have to like really break down and text around to see how Sweat start to finish was this year, but obviously relative to what they have, he's really good. Okay, let's last year there was so much momentum and everyone was picking the Browns. It was like the Browns, the Browns, the Browns. And the Texans are on scholarship in this spot. They make the playoffs, they get this spot. So we knew this was coming a month ago. Playing the Chargers, and I saw a stat that since 2011, Jim Harbaugh's first year in San Francisco, over the next 15 years or whatever, he has more playoff victories than Mike Tomlin, and obviously he left for like 8 years to Michigan. So this guy's success in the playoffs in the NFL, he hit the ground running with the 49ers. And honestly, that first year, people probably don't remember this, but they played Eli Manning, who went on to win a second Super Bowl. Kyle Williams, the GM's kid for the White Sox at the time, like muffed a punt. I mean, the 49ers probably should have won that game. And
Yep.
Alex Smith, I think, was like 1 of 15 or something on third downs. And it was, I don't think it went to overtime, but it came down to the final seconds. And it was just, he is a great playoff coach. I mean, he's comfortable playing in these games because he plays them normally during the regular season, like just tight contested defensive battles. But I feel like everyone, you talk about like road playoff games. Now Flacco is not as good as Herbert, but going on the road is just now the Texans aren't exactly like Buffalo, or Philly or something, but still, I mean, it's difficult. This team has playoff experience, and I think everyone goes, "Oh, the Texans suck." And yeah, relative to the hype, they're not as good. But I kind of like the Texans and the points in this spot. I don't necessarily think they win, but if it's a low scoring game, couldn't you see the Chargers winning like a game winning field goal, like 19-17 or something?
Got to take the points here. Completely agree with you. I mean, I project this like a coin flip. This line is crazy. Like this is assuming we're assuming now that the Chargers are like over 4 points better than the Texans. The Texans team that was just plus 3.5 in Kansas City a couple weeks ago. I know that they had a couple defensive injuries. Tank Dell got hurt, but this line is crazy. Give me the 3 points all day, especially with a total, like you said, a total of a low total. So like points are going to be at a premium. Historically, this was a favorite year in the NFL in the regular season. We'll see how it plays out in the playoffs. Historically, wild card weekend is a dog weekend. Uh, just if you go back just to 2017, dogs 52 and 34 against the spread overall, 24 and 12, 67% in the wild card round, 10, 3 and 2 home underdogs past 10 years. So yeah,
I mean,
you have to take the points here.
look at last year, the Bucks, the Packers. I mean,
Yep.
were the Texans an underdog to the Browns in that wild card weekend, or were they favored? Maybe it was pick 'em or something, but it was
Yeah,
felt like
it
there was a
was I
lot of
think
Browns love.
there was a ton of Browns love. And here's the thing, like yeah, yes, I'm worried about the Texans. The Texans' early down offense was troublesome all year. Their point differential was 0. They were 31st in success rate on early downs. They're more likely to turn it over than Herbert, who never throws picks. The Chargers have two really good offensive tackles to kind of neutralize that Texans pass rush. Their blitz under Minter has been really good when they use it. Texans struggle with their offensive line to pick up blitzes. But again, this number is way too high. And this Texans D is still elite. It's still a really, really, really good defense. And I just think this line is outrageous. And like you said, and by the way, the Chargers, they're good, but they're not like one of the elite teams. And here's who they beat on the road this year: Carolina, Denver, who, by the way, Denver's the only playoff team the Chargers beat the entire season. Carolina, Denver, Cleveland, New England, Vegas, and Atlanta. Only one playoff team. And in that Atlanta game, they were dominated, and Kirk Cousins was just throwing the ball to them.
Threw four picks.
Yeah, through 4 picks, and they still almost won the game. One was a pick six. So that's it. That's what they've done on the road. The Chargers had the lowest strength of victory in the entire playoffs. Yeah, and like you said, the Texans now, it's really funny to see this in the NFL. Everyone is talking about the Texans like they're the Broncos or the Steelers, right? Like they're 10.98, 10-point underdogs, so they have no chance in this game. People are already talking about the Chargers or the Chiefs. I look at all my mentions, like the Chargers are going to beat the Chiefs this weekend. Well, as if they don't have to go on the road and beat a team with a really good defense and still a really good quarterback in Stroud. I think Mixon will be able to find some holes here running the ball. You have Nico Collins. Stroud, going to see a lot of zone here. That's generally speaking what he excels against. Like, so the Texans could come in here loose, house money, play the disrespect card all week. Everyone's writing us off. So yeah, I think you got to take the 3 here. There should be a lower scoring game, 2 points at a premium.
And the Texans' O-line issues are up the center of the middle of the field, where the Chargers' dominant pass rush is the edges. I mean, Khalil Mack has kind of resurrected his career in Herbert. He looks fantastic, but he's not Chris Jones. I mean, he's lining up over tackles. So
Yep.
that is, if you told me that they had, some elite, if Aaron Donald was on the Chargers, I'd be like, yeah, Stroud might get sacked 10 times, but that's not necessarily the case here. So I'm glad we think alike. This next game almost feels too easy because the Steelers look like shit. Like there's no dispute. Like they have looked terrible. Defensive holes everywhere. Even in the game that was, in theory was close last week, they were down 19-7 going into the fourth quarter. George Pickens, you take enough of these flyers on these red flag wide receivers. Yeah, you hit some Hall of Famers like Antonio Brown, and then you get some of this. He thinks he's Antonio Brown. He sure doesn't play like it. And let's face it, it got cold, and Russell Wilson has not looked the same. But part of the reason this team dominated is like, it felt like the first couple of months their defense was awesome. And now you got guys wide open. They have good defensive linemen, but I don't trust anyone else. And the mojo, and even TJ Watt, they interviewed him right before that Bengal game. He's like, they were already in. He said it, and he was right. He's like, we need to get some momentum, right? We need to get going. And then immediately they're down and they lose, And the Ravens last week were kind of in a tough spot because they needed to win, so they're playing their guys, and then Zay Flowers gets hurt on. That sucks because shit, he's become good. But man, I mean, I just I get there's a rivalry and all this stuff, but you get one team. These teams are trending in completely different areas, and it does feel like there's an implosion factor for the Steelers. This is back-to-back years, Stuckey. I mean, you know this, but they have been enormous underdogs in the first round, not against the back-to-back champion, the Chiefs, the next tier of the two teams, the Bills and the Ravens. So if I'm a Steeler fan, I'm like, well, clearly the Chiefs are in a different universe than us. But that next two teams that are clearly two of the best teams in the league that just can't beat the Chiefs, we're not even in their world anymore. So it's like, what the fuck are we doing? I like the
Yeah,
Ravens. If you told me the final score is like, I don't know, 27-10 or something, like that's what it kind of feels like. It may be close, for like 20 minutes of game time, and then you just watch it, you're like, I don't know if that was actually close.
yeah. Steelers fans have to be like, if they get blown out here, like I think Tomlin's a really good coach, like one of the best rah-rah like motivators in the game. But like, is it time for in the Steelers organization? They're really loyal to him
I've
and
been
their
saying that
coaches
forever.
always.
Trade him to the Bears. Reset your
Yeah,
franchise.
sometimes it's just time for a new voice. But if they don't win this game, they'll be 0-6 straight up and 0-6 against the spread in their last six playoff games. And it's been a very long time since they've won a playoff game. And their seasons all go, it's like a script. They all go the same way. It's like like of late, hot start, fade down the stretch, lose the playoff game. Like that gets tiring. Uh, everything inside of me says that this game will just weirdly be close. Just because every Ravens Steelers game, I shouldn't say everyone, but like 80-90% of them in the Harbaugh Tomlin era are just always close and low scoring. I kind of like the under here as well. Everything on the field, as you alluded to, says that Ravens win easily. The market's kind of hinting at that too. But like the Ravens were just 7.5 point favorites at home a couple weeks ago. They did end up covering, but the Steelers were without two starting defensive backs. Joey Porter gets hurt early in that game. Ogunjobi was out. Pickens was out. Like they were decimated by injuries in that game. They're going to be healthier here at least, and there's no Zay Flowers, which is massive. I mean, now your starting wide receivers are Bateman, Aguilar, and Tylan Wallace. You're going to miss. You're really going to miss Flowers and just
I will
his
say this:
ability.
Bateman's looked good this year
He has, but he also is benefiting from the weight
from
of
Zay. Yeah.
Flowers. But the Ravens would probably go with more two tight end sets here. You still have Henry, you still have Lamar Jackson. But the biggest thing with the Ravens is that their offense has been historically dominant all year. And by the way, they had the hardest schedule. They faced the hardest schedule of opposing defenses in the entire league. And they have a top 10 regular season offense of all time by some metrics this year. The thing that has really made the Ravens dangerous and will make them dangerous in the playoffs is that they fix their defense. First 10 weeks of the year, 25th in scoring, 27th in yards allowed. Since week 11, they are number one in the league in almost every defensive category. What happened in week 11? They made a switch at safety. They took Kyle Hamilton, put him back at safety. They put Ardarius Washington in at safety. They got rid of Marcus Williams, got rid of their veterans who were just washed, inserted Humphrey into the slot, more basically full time, changed how they communicate the defense, simplified their scheme a bit as well. Call goes in to Roquan. Roquan communicates to Kyle Hamilton. Hamilton makes sure everyone is set and needs to be where they need to be. And everything has been like a smooth operation. Now, they've been number one in the league. Since week 11, first in scoring, first in yards, first in passing defense, first in yards per play allowed, first in EPA per play. Now, they have faced some underwhelming offenses. They faced the Giants, the Browns, and even, the Steelers twice, the Texans. Neither of those teams are firing on all cylinders, but they also faced the Chargers and the Eagles, and 5 of those 7 teams are in the playoffs at least. It has been boosted a little bit by who they've played, but there's no doubt that the defense has gone from a bottom feeder to one of the best in the league.
Yeah.
They've always been good against the run all year, but now they've fixed the issues in the secondary, simplified the scheme, and that defense now is playing at a championship level. So that's what makes them dangerous. And we'll say this line is hitting 10, 9.5, 10. Double-digit favorites in the NFL are usually good bets in the playoffs. 13-5 against the spread since 2010, 17-1 straight up. there's usually a reason why an NFL playoff team would be a double-digit favorite against another. I can't lay 10, but I wouldn't blame anyone for taking the Ravens. Everything you've seen on the field over the past month, the Ravens' defensive improvement, and just do like what Pickens shows up too? Does he like just decide he doesn't get a couple balls early and then he just is done for the day? Because that's basically their only avenue for offense. Tomlin is they're gonna be fired up for this game. They're gonna try to ugly it up. But I kind of like the under. I really do believe in the Ravens' defensive improvement. I do think that they'll miss Flowers. Steelers' defense will be healthier this time around. They didn't have Porter against the Ravens in that second meeting. They lost him. They were already down their other corner, down a safety. They couldn't just run what they want to run. So I think this will be a lower scoring game. I don't have a real true feel on the side, but I wouldn't blame anyone for taking the Ravens.
Okay, you mentioned rookie quarterbacks on the road, making their first, obviously, playoff start. It's challenging no matter what, let alone going to Buffalo, which has got to be on the short list, not just of home field advantages, but a pretty special place come January. This is tough for Bo. Listen, he's battled this season. He's probably just in terms of improvement from start to finish of the year. It's pretty remarkable what Sean Payton has done. Now the Bills, they're not for a Sean Payton team. They're really more of a defensive team. I know they just scored 100 points against the Chiefs practice squad, but they hang their hat on defense and pass rush. But this does feel like a spot. Do we look up and like Bo Nix throws several picks? It's one of those things that just unravels and go on to have a fantastic career. And when we look back, like remember Bo Nix's first playoff start against, who knows, maybe the Super Bowl champion Buffalo Bills on the road. Feels like a big, big challenge. And I think we'd all agree, and I'd say the same for the Chargers. Incredible season for Harbaugh and Sean Payton, right? Both their win totals were like 5-6 or something. The Chargers won 5 games last year. Everyone, and I know I'm guilty of this, thought the Broncos were going to suck. Now, part
Broncos
of it was like
5.5, yeah.
Yeah, part of it is last year. Now, granted, they got better as the season went on. You score 70 points in a game against you. Like I don't view your defense as great, and then turns out their defense was just elite, and Benito turned into like Lawrence Taylor. But I feel I would feel stronger if you told me I had to make the biggest bet of my life. Who would cover, the Bills or the Ravens? I hear what you said, and it just be like, well, Ravens Steelers could see divisional matchup. Maybe it is tight. This is a game I would be stunned if the Broncos cover this spread. I like the Bills, and this is a big number. It's playoffs, but rookie quarterback, I don't know. I like the Bills here, -8.5.
Yeah, it's in a way the Broncos have the path to cover as a dog of over a touchdown in that they have a really good defense, they have a really good offensive line, and they have a really good coach who has thrived as an underdog throughout his career. Those 3 things, good coach, good offensive line, elite defense, will get you a long way as far as just like covering spreads of over 7 in the NFL. And just if you just look at the metrics of these 2 teams, you have elite Bills offense versus elite Broncos defense. I would call it average Broncos offense versus, if you adjust for opponents, an average-ish Bills defense. But the biggest difference by far, which probably will end up deciding this game, is the quarterbacks. Bo Nix had an amazing season. He's improved on a weekly basis.
I didn't realize he threw for 29 touchdowns, just looking at stats.
Yeah, pretty wild. But the Broncos have, how many playoff teams have the Broncos beat? If you don't count the Chiefs, who sat all the starters, 1. I think the Bucs, that was it.
We don't count the Chiefs.
Yeah, we're not counting that game. But they arguably they should have beat the Chiefs.
Yeah.
To be fair,
they match up well against the Chiefs, right? Because they can rush the passer, and the Chiefs' offensive line is a little iffy.
Yeah. So that's just the biggest difference is your rookie quarterback making his first start. He's more likely to just make a couple critical mistakes. Rookie quarterbacks against McDermott's defenses, zone heavy, want to take away the explosive play, make you drive down the field, and then hope that you eventually make a mistake or they get a negative play. Rookie quarterbacks against McDermott, 7 touchdowns, 17 interceptions historically. So that's probably what happens in this game. Is you're gonna you're not going to be able to completely shut down Allen. He's going to make plays. He's going to make plays with his legs and his arm. And Nick's probably makes a couple catastrophic mistakes, as rookies tend to do in their first playoff start, especially on the road. I did play some under here as well, under 47. Historically, totals of 47 or more in Wild Card Weekend outdoors have been a very, very good bet. I do think the Broncos defense can hold its own here. And I think, look, the Bills aren't going to give up any explosive plays. I think Peyton knows that he's got to just keep this close as long as he can. And I do think that they'll have some success, like just Peyton scheming up things. It's going to be just very methodical. And that's going to keep the clock moving, but he's going to play conservative, play field position, not going to be taking too many risks early. Now, eventually they get down, you're going to have to, which is when it could get out of hand. But I think this total's a bit too high because I don't see the Broncos offense going off. I think their defense will hold its own, and I think Peyton will call this game close to the vest. And Knicks and that offense can do enough to just keep drives alive. Like you don't want them failing miserably and then they're just punting, 3-and-out punt, 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 and then they get way behind and they have to come out and chuck, which is then the game could get out of hand. So I like some under there as well. But this game, yeah, I mean, it just comes down to it's Josh Allen versus a rookie quarterback on the road in their first playoff start. It's probably the difference.
You know, we haven't talked about this yet, but if you'd had to do pressure rankings, I would put Sean McDermott I would put Sean McDermott, Sirianni, and Lamar. I mean, you could convince me of any different order of that group, but I would say, Sean McDermott in one of these games, if they're down, I could just see it getting a little tight. I mean, there's just a lot of pressure on him, probably as the MVP of the league. Regardless, Lamar's had the best season of his career, but like clearly, John Harbaugh and Sean McDermott have two of the greatest quarterbacks we've seen, like not only of their era, but like in my life, just pure talents. And the difference, last year the Ravens were in the AFC Championship game. Now you lose to the Chiefs, sometimes like losing to Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods, tip your hat. But like you gotta, the Bills to me at minimum for this season to be a success have to win these next two games. And like you said, the Broncos have a guy that's, I mean, getting paid $18 million for a reason. He's viewed as one of the best coaches in the league, and I think this year was a pretty big muscle flex for him. So it's like, this is a tough little matchup from a coaching perspective, and Vance Joseph and the defense is like, this maybe I'm underestimating, like, I like the Bills because of the road advantage, but from just a pure coaching advantage, like, Denver's really well coached, and that really, really matters in the playoffs. It's why, like, the Chargers-Texans game, like, I think D'Amico's really good, right? This isn't Jim Harbaugh against some guys like, how'd he make the playoffs? Just because he won some shitty division. Like, that's a good coaching matchup. And so is this Bills, to me, the Bills Bronco game is just a lot on the line with a lot of guys. Now, listen, Joe Brady's been a stud too. And it's like, that's the Philly thing. Like, so, Sirianni, I would say at minimum, right? You just got to win these next two games. You lose on the road in the NFC Championship game. People, depending on how it looks, would be mad. But it's like, listen, you go back to the NFC Championship game, you lose the Lions. Like, it's been a successful season. But could this game be a little trickier than everyone thinks? Like, everyone's off the Packers. Now, Jordan Love's been banged up. Christian Watson tore his ACL. He honestly wasn't even that productive this season. He was banged up. Defensively, is it safe to say Jeff Hafley upgrade over Joe Barry? Have they been better this season? Yeah. And like this Packer team, and this gets back to like the Sean Payton thing. Like, Google LaFleur's resume, and I know he's had Rodgers, but even last year with Jordan Love, like he's won playoff games. This is not like fresh bright lights. Like I'm overwhelmed here. Like they went into Dallas last year, a 12-win team, and beat the shit out of them. So it's like, this is not a team and a group of guys. It's all their core guys. And Josh Jacobs is like, from Alabama, and he played on that team a couple years ago with Derek Carr that made the playoffs at the end. Like they've been in big games. I like Philly. I mean, obviously their roster, I think you could argue is, given its health, is if Jalen's healthy, is the best in the NFL, top to bottom. But this is not like an easy first round matchup for being a 2-7.
Yeah, you mentioned it with the with coaches, can't stress that enough how important coaches and coordinators are in the playoffs. It like I can sit here and talk about, okay, this is what this team does. These are these tendencies. This is how much this team runs zone, man, blah blah. But this is the time that you switch that up, right? And you have curveballs, and you come out with the high leverage games, and that's where you can see these types of things where the coaches can make all the difference, and then those high leverage decisions on fourth downs and your script in the beginning of games, all
Short
those things.
yardage.
Yeah, all those things magnified. So coaching is just absolutely massive. And yeah, the floor, I think, is one of the best. Been very, very one of the best as an underdog too against the spread for what it's worth. I played the Packers first half +3. I think the line is too high in general. Um, I look, the Eagles defense is legit. Like since week after their bye, when they put Cooper DeJean in the starting lineup, they're both of their rookie cornerbacks have been outstanding. That was the biggest
Stud.
weakness
Yeah.
last year. Their linebacker room was a weakness last year. Zach Baum came over from the Saints. He's been great. And Fangio's been obviously a massive upgrade at defensive coordinator. They have all the pieces on offense. Hurts does still hold on to the ball too long, which leads to like he has the highest rate of dropbacks that lead to sacks, throwaways, or scrambles in the league at 25%. So he does still just hold it a bit too long. That's like kind of what holds their passing offense back a bit. And they face the easiest schedule of opposing defenses in the league. Packers faced a much harder schedule, played in a much tougher division overall as well. But the reason I like first half on the Packers +3, I show value in the number, but I think number one, LaFleur's gonna have a good script. Number two, Hurts could come out a little rusty. You know, he hasn't played in a while. There's also data out there that suggests there is dip in production in your first game back from a concussion. Now, it's been a while, so maybe that's not as magnified, but we still don't have a ton of
Do,
data on
do,
this
do you think
stuff.
they were screwing with people? Like that he could have been cleared weeks ago, or they've just been like, is it just a league mandate? From my understanding, is like you clear it when you clear it. Like he wouldn't have played last week anyway, so why would they even care? That
Yeah,
to me is a little concerning that like he was in the protocol. It's one thing maybe you miss a game and clear it the next Monday or Tuesday, but like this carried on for like weeks.
I agree. Yeah, it is more. It seems a bit. I mean, he's got to play, but it seems like is there going to be a residual effect and just general rust, right? Not playing for 20 days. You know, you see that in week one with quarterbacks after they don't play in the preseason. So early on, that could be a problem. And then just in general, the Eagles all year were slow starters. This is the team they averaged 3.6 points in the first quarter. That's 21st in the NFL. 12.4 in the first half. It's right around average. Packers are 6.4 in the first quarter, 13.6 in the first half. That's fourth and sixth. So Packers very good first half offense. Eagles not. You just take the of first two drives of the all for the offense of the Eagles all year. They're a bottom three offense in terms of EPA. From the third drive on, top three offense. So they just the script is not working. There's something they haven't been able to figure out. And these are two very run heavy teams. Two of the I think in neutral game states the two heaviest run offenses in the NFL. What does that mean? Especially like in the first half, fewer possessions. So there might not be that many possessions. So if the Eagles start slow, a couple of possessions, Packers have a good script. Hurts a little rusty. I I want that +3 in my pocket. And yeah, I am a bit worried about the Green Bay defense in the
Packers
back
start
end.
slow sometimes too, though. I feel like Minnesota game, the Detroit game, and then Jordan gets going in the second half. But
Yeah,
if the Eagles
it's
are starting
true.
slow too, maybe it's just 10-7 at half. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, and that happened last year too as well. But I trust the LaFleur script in this spot. Where they miss Watson, if you look with and without Watson on the field, their explosive play rate goes way down in the passing game. And the running game's impacted a little bit too because he just stretches the field. They need Reed to step up and not have drops. They need Dubs to step up. And but they're going to play zone here on defense. A lot of zone. Hurts is better versus man. I think that they can get him maybe for a turnover or two, especially if he's just a little off early on. And yeah, no Alexander worries me. If you look at their splits just against receivers with and without him, and he's been hurt for a lot of the year, but with him on the field when he's healthy, like they have a bona fide top corner, which they just do not have right now. which is scary going up against, you know, Smith and Brown when you already have to worry about Barkley. So I worry about just if the dam breaks, and then the Eagles are such good front runners. If they get a lead, they can go on like an eight
Oh,
to ten
yeah.
minute touchdown drive, and then just suck the soul out of the other team with the pushes, and then it's just like a 9 minute touchdown drive, and then it's lights out. But I don't mind the Packers here. I think this will be a really good game. I don't mind taking the points. I took some first half, +3.
I think the way someone beats Philly in the next 3 rounds and the way that they don't, win the NFC is you get up on them and they
Gotta
mentally
jump on
crack.
them.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then just force them to crack because, like you said, they get a lead. They are the best front running team because they got so much talent and they're so explosive, and then they start vibing.
And
But like
they only have to get 9 yards for a first down.
you get like 14-3, especially in these either this week or next week at the link, and they start booing and fucking AJ Brown starts side eyeing people and Sirianni and it just can get weird. It's
Yep.
to me they have the most weird potential if they get down in a spot. Like even the
Yep.
Bills, if they got down, I've watched the Bills get down in a lot of games. I think Sean's mellowed a little bit, and clearly, like he's not as insecure about the whole situation. Like he's the boss. So I think half the people looking like, what's Sirianni even doing on the sideline? So I hear you there. And the one thing with LaFleur, I think we saw it last week with Kevin O'Connell, and honestly, all year, he treats Sam Darnold like he's Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. Just fling it, fling it, fling it, fling it. McVay, like they're Shanahan guys. I mean, Kevin O'Connell technically isn't, but like they're all under that tree. LaFleur is the closest to Kyle of like, I'll run it 40 times if it's working. Like I'm a run game guy. That's how he got Rodgers rolling again. Like, Aaron, get back under center. Let's just control the game. And then the passing game comes from there. And he was with Kyle for so long, and that shit works in the playoffs, especially as a dog,
Yeah.
because you can control the game. Where you just saw like, hey, Kevin, run the ball, get something easy for Sam. I bet LaFleur and Kyle were watching that. Like, why are you force feeding these passes when your guy's off a little bit? It's like
Yeah.
the Houston Rockets when they just kept shooting threes against the Warriors. Like, just get a layup, But
Especially
it's
in the
like,
red, like inside the 10, they weren't even trying to run. It was
I
crazy.
know, but you're wired. Having worked for Andy Reid, who is like, the steroid version of those guys, you're wired like you're wired. And like your true colors, you're a pass guy or a run game guy. And like that's when all else fails, you lean one way or the other. And it's why. So I'm with you. I think this game's going to be very, very interesting. I'm staying away. I, I, I just think that I'm with you though. That number feels a little big, though. It wouldn't shock me if the Eagles win by like 15. I think this. We talked about the Washington Bucs game. I'm going Rams. Now, obviously, there's this curveball in the world of these fires that are just raging, that are impacting everything, and they might have to play the game in Glendale, and it just uproots a little bit of their just not just home field advantage, but who knows? Maybe guys have had to evacuate some homes, or people they know, or maybe their girlfriend. Who knows? It's just it's not an ideal situation. But I think you saw that listen, I'm pro Sam Darnold. It can't really be argued what we witnessed, but that first half, like he airmailed 8 passes, and he started like there were a lot of clips going around, like guys were open. He did the seeing ghost again. He struggled to pull the trigger, and it just unraveled. What if the Rams get after him a little bit? I mean,
And they
you
got a
listen to
good
your left
pass
tackle.
rush. They have a good young pass
That's what I'm
rush.
saying. So, and we talk coaching, 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 coaching. Listen, Kevin, easy guy to like. Media loves him. Like, Google how many big games the guy's won in his life. I mean, this is like I think we just look at him like an equal to all these cats. Like zero career playoff wins last time I checked. So and now he's a road dog against Sean McVay,
Road
or I mean a
favorite.
road favorite. Excuse me. Like I just think people are underestimating. Now listen, the Rams have not looked good when they were playing guys, but remove the Buffalo game. Offense has been off. But to me, like this is a classic spot like last week, right? Sean McVay didn't give a shit about that game. Who do you think they were game planning for during the week of the Seattle game? They were probably breaking down the Lions and the Vikings. Half the staff does one, half the staff does other, and Jimmy just run 10 of our plays all game long. He didn't care about that game, which you could argue whether he should have, because now he plays Washington, but we know that's not what Sean does. I just think coaching, coaching, coaching matters a lot. And listen, I'm not acting like Kevin O'Connell and Flores aren't good, but I'm pro Sam Darnold, but if he gets off, the other thing is confidence. It takes a while to build up, and it really kind of came for him. It can go away. I don't care what you do, really quick. So now, like short week, ton of pressure. Everyone's kind of questioning him now. What if you have a bad couple early drives? I could just see that getting weird fast, or just goes well. I mean, they clearly have a lot of talent, and Sam's made a lot of big plays, but their coach is not going to keep like he is going to be relentless on calling pass plays. That's just what he does.
Yeah, the Rams secondary worries me a bit here against the Vikings, and like I feel like I'm selling the Vikings. I'm selling just like low on them after what we saw last week. But I'm with you on the Rams. I bet the Rams. Now it's a little dicey with way more important things in the world. But the air quality and the fire that they could force them to move, which obviously wouldn't be ideal. Um, but at the end of the day, give me the better quarterback as a home dog in this matchup. Like
It
that's
would
what it
definitely
boils
it
down to
definitely
me.
wouldn't be ideal too if they came here because I feel like a lot of people from the general Minnesota region live in Arizona and definitely
Yep, probably be
snowbird
more
here.
A lot of
I
Vikings
could see
fans.
that being like
A home game.
80% Vikings fans.
Yep. Uh yeah. So that wouldn't be ideal, but just give me the better quarterback. And again, I mentioned the stat before, first time quarterback. A quarterback making their first playoff start, 33%. I think it's 1937 and 1 against quarterbacks with playoff experience. It hasn't gone well. And Darnold, it looked like he was seeing ghosts last week. I mean, and you mentioned it. They have now you've won 14 games, but you have to go on the road, which is crazy on Wild Card weekend. But you might have a quarterback and a kicker who are lacking in confidence because Will Reichard really struggled down the stretch. And the Rams kicker, Cardi, who has had his struggles at times, he's now has a ton of confidence. I think he hit a 57 and a 58 yarder. That could make the difference. But yeah, and you mentioned with McVay, some people agree with it, some people don't, but that's what he always does. He did it in 2017, he did it last year, did it this year. Doesn't care about the seeding. In this case, I can see it in a way like Stafford's older. Down the stretch, he looked a little bit older, and they didn't have a bye since like week 5. So I think that the rest, the preparation, they basically had a bye week last week. So you got Stafford and this offense, home dog, better quarterback. Yeah, I'm taking it. And the Vikings have been good. O'Connell, hell of a season, what he's done with Darnold. But I think the Rams can get pressure here. And look, the Vikings, they did win 10 games in a row before that loss to the Lions. The only playoff team that they beat during that stretch was the Packers by 2. That was it during that stretch. And I still think that their secondary is very vulnerable, like just from a talent perspective. And the Rams receivers, I think they can. I actually think the Rams can run it too. The Vikings have a really good statistical run defense, but that's because most of the year they were up and like they were leading teams and dictating the game state. And like you saw when they played teams like the Lions when they weren't up, they Lions ran all over them. So I think Kyron Williams can have enough success here. So yeah, I would be very concerned about Darnold, especially if he gets off to a slow start. But even if Darnold's on, like the Rams can still keep up. Like look at the Bills game, right? Like the Rams can still win this in a shootout uh, if they need to. And yeah, they have the rest, the preparation advantage. I am super curious. Like there's a lot of matchups here. One thing I should mention, back to the Bucks coaching, like give me Liam Cohen over Cliff Kingsbury too. Um,
Oh, all day.
so like that matters too. But here, Flores versus McVay is such a fascinating chess match to me because what does Flores do? In the first meeting, so the Rams beat the Vikings earlier this year at home. In that game, it was a pretty tricky spot for the Vikings. They were on a short week. Thursday night, had to go out west. They didn't know Nakua was going to play. Like he was highly questionable. Flores said he didn't think he was going to play. He found he was shocked. So they didn't really have a game plan for Nakua, and like it was a short week anyway. They didn't blitz as much as they usually do, but they play a ton of zone, and then they're going to blitz a lot. Stafford and those receivers did just destroy zone. And I think Stafford this year, some matches like 31st against man, like top 3 against zone. Flores won, one game this year, and Jordan Love has kind of similar splits too. Flores won one of the games against the Packers this year, went just against everything they've been doing all year and went man heavy. So I'm very curious to see like the game plan that McVay has, he always has like a really good wrinkle. Like just something you wouldn't expect on the offense and how what they're going to run. And then what does Flores do? Like that's such a cool chess match to me. But to boil it down to most simplified terms, which sometimes you just have to do, better quarterback, home dog, assuming they're playing at home. Give me,
I
I'm with you
also,
on the Rams.
2 years ago when they lost to the Giants in this round, they had won 13 games. I just had to Google it because I was like, they win 12, they win 13-4. This year they have 14 wins. If you lose twice in 3 years in the first round when you win a total of 27 games, like I do think Kevin O'Connell's good, but I also thought that, and listen, it might not have directly come from him, but for a story to come out in one of the biggest days of his coaching career, that like teams might trade for him. Clearly, he wants to get paid. Like it was kind of Parcellsian. It's like, bro, let's pump the brakes. You're gonna get paid
Yes.
this offseason. If I was Dan Campbell, I would have been licking my lips. It's like these players aren't dumb. Like they know what's going on. It's like, okay, you tell all these players, let's focus, focus, focus. Meanwhile, you got fucking Glazer talking about like guys are going to trade essentially like I make 7 million. It's time to pay me like 15. It's like, oh, I was like, oh, that's not a good sign. And that's kind of classic football. You can do that if you're Andy Reid or something like Kevin. Let's slow down. And then you get your ass kicked against Aaron Glenn. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah,
And
very,
that
very interesting timing on those reports.
yeah, to me, I didn't like that at all. And if I was a Vikings fan, and I know they're not as like inside baseball on it all, but it's pretty clear, who wants to, why that report comes out, right? Especially when it comes out, Minnesota hasn't talked to him about a contract extension. It's like, well, let's win a real game. You win a lot of regular season games, like that's cool. Like Mike McDaniel's won some regular season games. He's got bounced in the first round a couple times. Like, are you getting bounced in the first round a couple times? So I think this is a big moment for Kevin O'Connell, who is like, now again, I'm not anti Kevin O'Connell, but Brandon Staley was this really, really quick, then everyone jumped off him. McDaniel was
Yeah.
this for a while. Kevin O'Connell's that new version. Now, again, 13, 14 wins, those are great regular seasons. You start winning a real game, and this is a real game.
Yep, I agree with you. It makes the playoffs so fascinating. And some of it's not fair, and some of it's fair, right? But
For
that's
sure.
the world you live in the NFL with
I know.
these one and dones, and then questions start getting asked. By the way, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. We debated this on my NFL podcast this week. If you had, we're just going to take the NFC, this year's NFC, and that you have to get through the NFC, and then you have to play the AFC. Your goal is to win a Super Bowl. All of the rosters are the same. All of the coaching staffs are the same. There's no advantage. You have the same scheme. Every other player is the same. Like so, if you were like playing on Madden, you would have the same players except quarterback, and you can choose which quarterback for your team in the NFC that you would take that's currently in the playoffs. Which quarterback are you taking if your goal is to win a Super Bowl this year and to get through the playoffs this year and then to beat, either presumably the Chiefs, Bills, or Ravens? Which NFC quarterback are you rolling with?
This is going to sound crazy because I probably talk some shit about this guy, but I might take Jalen Hurts just because he can move. I almost said Jaden. I just the Jared Goff thing. What if my offensive line's not great and who's my coach? All of a sudden he can't move. Like he's pretty predicated. Like his success is predicated on some protection, right?
And Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
Just
So I Stafford, but like you said, I mean the version of Stafford a couple years ago, he's looked a little old.
yeah, and
So
he can't move.
no, I that's tough. It's hard to rank the NFC quarterbacks because like Jordan Love's like this raw big time talent who we've seen have some moments, but he can also look like crap. It's
Yeah,
tough. I
I
mean, it's
consider
not.
Love because if they're you could make a case for so many of them, but I wouldn't take Daniels just because he's a rookie. But like you
I
could
would need
even
I would need mobility in this exercise.
yeah, you could argue Baker. You could argue many. I think I would take Love. I think I might take Love because I want to win the Super Bowl and I need to like beat the Chiefs or the Ravens, the Bills, and all the rosters the same in the NFC. Love's upside, I know, is really high. Like when he's on and clicking. But yeah, there's no like this is the right answer in the NFC.
AFC is in a
Um,
different universe.
yeah, from a
I mean,
quarterback
that's
perspective for sure.
I think the
You even have Herbert, like even the you have the
oh,
top tier, second tier, and then even the next tier with Herbert and Stroud. Um,
you would take
that
Herbert over every guy in the NFC without hesitation.
yes,
You know,
yes, absolutely.
the one thing I gotta two things were pretty cool last weekend. Obviously, Bryce Young. That's just what a cool story. He looked like a UFL player, and then to come back in after Andy Dalton gets in the car accident and not just look like a real NFL player, like be kind of a fun, like they might have something there. I do think Baker.
A no look throw for the guy who looked
It was
like he
sick.
had zero confidence, like hated his life being out there, to then in one season then be throwing a no look throw, like taking leadership, yelling at guys, having fun, smiling. Yeah, it was definitely encouraging. So it was nice to see for a guy who
We could
really,
all
really
be
struggled.
jaded and negative. The longer you work in this, and just it's easier to be down on guys. But that was just an easy story to kind of make you smile and an easy guy to root for. I do think there are some similarities. It's way different, but in terms of like what Baker has turned into these last 2 years, I don't know if he's getting married, having a child. Clearly, it's hard to tell like his body, but I think he's talked about slim down a little bit because he moves dramatically better. He's always had a really explosive arm. I mean, he's just a really good player. He's not in the Josh Allen, Lamar, Mahomes, but he for sure to me is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
Yep.
And I,
Yeah, you
I
just
just
got to
I just think
avoid
he's a really good player.
yeah, he just has to avoid the catastrophic mistakes, which he can at times just throw a ball in wayward's way a bit too much. But yeah, his mobility and then like Liam Cohen has been amazing. And you do need help as a quarterback, and you can't just have a one-dimensional offense. They couldn't run the ball a lick, and now they have a dynamic rushing attack, which helps
I know.
everything else out. So yeah, that Baker's been fun to watch this year, and his scrambling has been great. But yeah, Young, look, there's definitely some promise there now for sure for Carolina uh, in the future, where it looked like it was dead.
I mean, the Bucks are just well run, aren't they? I mean, they
Yep.
draft well. They just run a good operation. Obviously, it's now starts with Baker. So okay, let's have an exciting weekend, and I hope at least like I don't know 75% of these games are good because we're gonna get a couple blowouts and some duds in the second half, but hopefully some of them are really good. Maybe we even get like a legendary just game of the year, but one
Yeah,
can
I'm
only
hoping at
hope.
least four are really good. Be awesome if there's five that are really good.
The
But
Monday night game recently has been a dud, right? Dak
yep,
blew out Tom Brady last year. The Bucks blew out the Eagles. So hopefully,
yep,
I wouldn't mind. A couple years ago, remember the Rams kicked Kingsbury and Kyler's ass?
yep,
I
yep.
wouldn't mind a good Monday night game.
Yeah, that would be nice. Especially since they're making those teams play on a short week anyway.
I know.
Um, the Yeah, just keep in mind historically it doesn't mean it's predictive, but this weekend, if you're listening, this weekend generally a dog weekend. Um, and that's what wild card weekend has been if you're looking to bet and home dog weekend specifically. I happen to like both home dogs this week. Texans and Rams.
Okay, Stuckey, I'll talk to you next week. We'll dive into the divisional round. We'll dive into we'll know who's playing in the national championship. So be an exciting, I mean, divisional round, widely considered the best weekend in all of football, and obviously the national championship is we're recording this on Thursday before the games has a chance to be, I mean, pretty incredible matchup. So fired up for some football. Talk to you soon, buddy.
You bet. Have a good weekend, brother.